All right, today we've got a number of guests that I'm just excited to have on the podcast. One thing that all of these guests have in common is that they were at the 2024 Furnace Fest. And I just think the world of Furnace Fest, and they couldn't have closed it out in a better way. And so when we got home, I got home a couple days ago, I reached out to Cullen. I'm like, we should do like a Furnace Fest. And I was like, what would be better than just Cullen and I just talking about our dumbass reasons for why we love this year's Furnace Fest? I was like, let's invite a bunch of friends of ours who also are at Furnace Fest this year to talk about the reasons why they love Furnace Fest this year. So we invited Austin Visser from The Undertaking, probably like your 10th time on this damn podcast. You're an honorary co-host. I mean, I really truly mean it at this point.
I declined an invitation a couple weeks ago with Justin to make sure I wasn't on here too much.
You are kind of the whore of the Black Sheep.
Well, you're kind of the whore of Furnace Fest as well, as you were trying to sing on everybody's stage.
That's true.
So it makes sense.
Just singing in everybody's band. We also got Eric, Eric, what's your podcast called again?
It is now called The Everglow Show.
Oh, nice.
Oh, you did change it.
Nice.
Okay. I was going to say, I'm pretty sure you changed it recently, so I just wanted to make a double check on that.
Yeah, it was called Decent Christian Music Podcast, but we wanted to talk about more than Christian music, and we didn't want people to be disappointed thinking we were just going to be talking about all Amy Grant.
So now you can talk about Hope's Fall.
Hell yeah.
That's right.
Right. I actually have a Hope's Fall banner that I'm looking at.
Well, you better show us, Greg.
Does it have Adam's face on it?
Nice.
Whoa. Look at that. There we go. Love it. We also have Cortland, who is not only just a dear friend, but also a podcast host. Cortland, what podcast do you host?
I have the Thereafter podcast.
Love it. Love it. And you're like a lifelong scene guy. You still kind of look like one.
I'm doing my best. I'm growing the bangs out while I still got them,
Love it. Love it. And we got Jason Kirk from The Athletic from The New York Times.
Hey, what's up? I also co-host the Shutdown Fullcast, a college football podcast, and the Vacation Bible School podcast, a religion show with my wife Emily. I just want to make sure podcasters here. And on the small note, Eric, I think I got you beat. I have an anchor tattoo, so the Hope's Fall logo.
Wow. Love it. And we have none other than we have none other than Adam himself from Hope's Fall, hence all the Hope's Fall jokes. Dave Ramsey, Adam, what do you do again? Besides give poor financial advice for people?
Right. Well, I do that. I play drums in Hope's Fall, and I'm hanging on for dear life on this technology podcast thingamajig that we're doing here. So bear with me. I might fall out of here, but thank you for having me.
Just make sure you're always tuned to AM, right? Not FM.
Right. Yeah, that's what I figured.
All right. Just want to make sure we're all clear. Well, so basically the way we want to structure this was we just wanted to go through our top 3 Furnace Fest moments from this year. And so pretty simple. We'll just, I think one by one, we'll just say a moment that we just really loved about Furnace Fest, maybe give a little commentary on it. And eventually we'll get through it and then we'll be done. Pretty simple. So Cullen, is there an order in which we want to do this?
I think we should go in order of whoever's on your screen first. And we just go clockwise.
Okay. All right. Well, I didn't want to take the spotlight right away as the co-host of the BlackSheep Podcast.
Show us the way, man.
Yes, I will. Well, I feel like I'm going to steal probably the most common Furnace Fest moment, and it's fine. Like if you want to reiterate a moment, if somebody has already mentioned a moment that has already been mentioned, you want to say it again, that's totally fine. But I'm guessing this will probably be one, and that is the almighty Norma Jean. I can't really pick one part of this set, but maybe there's 2 things I want to mention about that set. Obviously, they were one of the bands that kind of closed out the main stage of the festival. They were, I think, it was like Norma Jean, then Blindside, then Under Oath. So they were kind of one of the last bands to ever play Furnace Fest. First off, it was probably the most dangerous show I've ever been to. It just felt like I was up there with Cullen, like pretty close to both the pit and right up front. And I'm pretty sure, like, I started on like the right side of the stage, and somehow by the end of the show moved to the left-hand side of the stage without even trying. There were so many moments where I felt like I was about to fall over, where I was about to get like my head smacked off. Like it felt very, very dangerous. And I've been to a lot of Norma Jean shows, but this one definitely felt like the most dangerous one I've ever been to. So hats off for Norma Jean for that. And then obviously, elephant in the room, Scoggin coming in, which I think most of us were probably expecting him to join, especially after we all saw that 68 was announced with Furnace Fest. I thought like we probably were going to expect that for the last Furnace Fest. What I wasn't expecting were like Scotty and Durr, and I'm forgetting the other guy's name now, but like to get like some of these other guitarists from Norma Jean to join on stage to play Memphis was such a cool moment. And the fact that like so many people were on stage at the end, including myself, it was just like such a really incredible moment, and I think really highlights like just what made Furnace Fest really special as a festival. So my top moment for sure, I've got to mention Norma Jean. I want to steal that right away and let you all copy me after that. So that's my probably my top moment of Furnace Fest.
Does anyone have some agreement there? I would say that was easily within my top 3 moments as well.
Yeah, I think that was on everybody who attended top 10 for sure.
It was.
Yeah, like as a Georgian who saw Norma Jean back when they were ludicrous, as I mentioned last time I was on Black Sheep, that was 25 years in the making. That moment of seeing the entire Norma Jean cinematic universe on stage all at once, and like the amount of drama that they built into that moment, right in the middle of Memphis, like right before the biggest hit, that they just drew it out and just made everyone wait. And then you see the bow tie coming on stage. That was like, that was absolutely the
I half expected Aaron Weiss to like descend down from like the rafters of the main stage. It was that iconic and epic.
Did anyone
that was probably the only thing that could have made it all the better.
Did anyone actually count how long they held
that
time
like
in
frame?
Between between the verse and the breakdown?
It had to have been like a couple minutes. It felt like an eternity,
like
but I bet it was at least 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I've seen that moment go like viral on like music internet, like not even people who were there. So yeah, like there's lots and lots of video out there, so we could get a official timing.
I filmed that entire song, and that song's probably normally like 4 minutes, and the entirety of my video is like 9 minutes. So I think like there's a good chance that they held that one part out for 3 minutes. Like it kind of felt like an eternity, but it was awesome.
It was worth it.
It was like I got chills. I wasn't like super close, and I didn't try to get on stage or anything, but that was one of those moments. Like just being a kid when when that album came out, to see all that kind of come into place. And I was thinking like, how cool is it for Scotty and Durr and like all those guys to be able to like participate in the longevity of that band and the legacy of that band. I don't know, that was cool. I'd heard rumors that Aaron Weiss was there, so I was kind of like ready for it, and that I was bummed that it didn't happen, because that would have been like the coolest thing ever.
I feel like the rumors were flying everywhere about all of that stuff. So
Yeah, I do think, obviously over the number of years, Scoggin has, when he happens to be in town or, near where Norma Jean is playing, he'll make an appearance. It's pretty rare at this point, but this does feel like maybe one of the last times we see that. It probably isn't the last time, but I bet it would be maybe in the last like handful of times that we'll ever see Scoggin do that part of that song ever again.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, Cullen, you're next on my screen, so take it away.
My all-time favorite part about Furnace Fest, and I say this every year, but it's the people that you get to hang out with that you don't get to see. Austin, I got to give you a hug. Actually, I think I got to give all of you a hug except for Jason. Sorry, man. But it was such a beautiful weekend, and I actually found myself wanting to like maybe miss a show or a part of a show so that I could just go see people that I've had the pleasure to interact with for so long, not in person. It fills my heart, and I'm sure you guys all feel the same way. that this is a tight knit community, and this is not the kind of thing that you're going to get to see. And Mason and I were looking through festivals and stuff like that coming up, and for next year potentially, and there's nothing that's going to compare to this, and there's not going to be an opportunity where all these same people are going to be in the same place. So the people are incredible, and I love all y'all.
The beautiful people.
That's right.
Yeah, the definitely the hanging out with friends you haven't seen in forever was, I think also probably on all of our list of memorable moments and cool things about Furnace Fest.
Yeah, I would imagine, especially like Adam, you've been in Hopes Fall for a long time, and I would imagine for bands that have been around for 25, 30, 20 years, however long, but have been around for a while, to like see people maybe you haven't seen for like 20 years is probably such a cool moment. Obviously that's not like Cullen and I's experience exactly of Furnace Fest, because we're just like, we're not like lifelong music veterans, but it probably is super cool for you all to like just like see people for the first time. Like Cullen and I hung out with Leonore from Five Iron for a lot of the fest, and like it was super cool to just hear her talk about like some of the people that like she used to tour when she was like 20 years old with, and like to still see them today like 25 years later. It's just to see her kind of light up talking about like, oh my gosh, like that was somebody who was just like so young at the time, and then now they're like this like old person that's got kids and might be having grandkids soon, and it's just cool.
On
like
second and
to
third
me, like that's got to be a cool thing.
Yeah, right. I
Right.
mean, I definitely like think that there is this, for me, I never got to go to Cornerstone, and like growing up in the like late 90s, early 2000s, Cornerstone Fest was like every year that Cornerstone would happen.
Yeah.
I was like this big FOMO. Obviously there was like no social media or like internet like there is today. So like I like in my mind, Cornerstone Festival is like similar to the Pearly Gates. Like it's like this like perfect place in Illinois where like all my favorite music happens. And so I think Furnace Fest in many ways like embodies like what my 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old self thought that Cornerstone Fest in Illinois was like, and that I never got to experience.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And Mason and I mean, our friendship started really behind all this kind of stuff. We would get on YouTube and watch 240p Cornerstone videos, and we would just watch for hours and hours and hours, just wishing that we were there, right? And this felt like that,
Yeah, like, has anybody been to Cornerstone other than me?
Yeah, I went to Cornerstone 2000.
Hell yeah.
Okay.
Just
yeah,
that one?
I was at
that was
Hell
always,
yeah.
that's always
I mean, the last one
awesome.
was what, 2002 or something like that? Like it
Yeah.
didn't go much farther.
No,
it was like
it went up to like
2012.
2005.
Really?
2006.
No, it went like 2012.
Did it go that late?
No, but not in Peoria, Illinois,
Right.
like, not the original
Right.
site, right? Yeah. Like we played in 99 and 2000, maybe 2001, I can't remember, but yeah, it's definitely has a Cornerstone feel and a vibe, except the only difference is you're not camping out on site. But it's still kind of like, it's almost like a smaller, more relevant version of Cornerstone now. But yeah, I think you guys would have loved Cornerstone back in the day for sure.
Love it. All right, Austin, you're next.
Well, I'm 0 for 2 because you guys have taken both of my top picks. But I'll expand on the Memphis Will Be Laid Waste one, because one of my moments was just all the bands playing, every band playing like their one big song. Every time they played it, it was so rowdy, and I don't know if it was more rowdy this year with security. I don't know if it was different. It just seemed like Comeback Kid, Wake the Dead, Better Lovers, 30 over 13, Evergreen Terrace doing No Donnie, and then Cheney back to back, Norma Jean. It just seemed like every time that they did like the big song, there was a blob of people on stage. No Innocent Victim, with their breakdown at the end of their set. It just seemed like every single time that happened, people were ready to just jump on stage and mosh and crowd surf and whatever was happening. And I just felt like getting to see those hits being played by some of my favorite bands of all time was like, okay, this is like an inside out, like, core memory that I'm just filing away, that like I got to see No Innocent Victim do I Would Die Tonight for My Beliefs with a crowd of people on top of them. You got to see No Donnie, which I hadn't seen Evergreen Terrace play in probably 20 years, because there's some bands that I just haven't for some reason seen in forever. And the last time I saw Comeback Kid was at Face Down Fest 2004. So it's properly been 20 years since I've seen Comeback Kid. And so to them to play some of their old songs again was cool, that I just hadn't heard in a while. So, and then Greg bringing out his flamethrower. And then now, like, you were there in person and you see the photos and the videos, like, that the media team captured from that. And I come home and I show, like, my wife the Greg blowing his fire, and she's like, that shouldn't be allowed. That's very dangerous. And you're like, yeah, I know. It's dangerous, but also it's like perfect.
It's
getting
which was great because
keep going.
Yeah, he did that in the original Furnace Fest run with Dillinger.
Oh, really?
So it was kind of almost like an homage to himself, somewhat. Yeah,
that's super cool. Love it. Eric, you're next on my list.
For me, I think it's that Shai Hulud and No Innocent Victim reminding me that I still love hardcore. Like, I keep thinking I'm going to outgrow it, but no, as long as bands like that are still playing. Shai Hulud just had incredible energy. Same with No Innocent Victim, just fun shows.
You're never too old for hardcore.
That's right.
I'm not saying I'm too old for it, but I keep thinking that I might outgrow it, or feeling like I should have outgrown it or something. But that's just not gonna happen. And every time I see a great band like that, it reminds me of that.
It does, like, going to a festival like this, seeing like Under Oath, for example, for me, Under Oath was like my favorite band. Like, I wanted to be Aaron Gillespie when I was 11 or 12 years old. Like, I tried to grow out my hair like him. Like, I wanted to be like Aaron Gillespie, and to like see Under Oath on stage, closing out Furnace Fest. And here it is, like 18 years later from when I was like a 12-year-old wanting to be Aaron Gillespie. It's like, oh my God, like, I was 12 years old and I didn't know it at the time when I was 12, but like, these were like some of the most formative things in my life. And here I am, like 18 years later, still being really formed by something like Under Oath. It's just really cool that, like, when I was 12 years old, I wasn't, aware that would be the case. But, now 18 years later, I probably is still going to be like going to Under Oath shows and loving Under Oath, right? It's just really cool that, like, at 12 years old, I was finding something that was going to change my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if y'all are anything like me, where people, would say, that's just a phase, it'll grow out.
I was just going to say that.
And stuff. And you almost start to believe that. But as long as there's, things like Furnace Fest and, a lot of the hardcore bands I like don't put out much music anymore, but on the rare occasion they do. Talking about, like Life in Your Way and bands like that. But when they do, it's nice to have that reminder that this is part of my DNA and it's not going anywhere.
For sure. No, I remember people that were older than me in positions of power constantly saying, "Oh, you're gonna grow out of that. You're not gonna like that forever." And I was like, "Oh, really?" Because I mean, they were right about everything else, supposedly. And yeah, I haven't grown out of it. So maybe I'm just sick in the head. Who knows? Yep. Maybe we're all sick in the head.
That's always that's a real possibility.
Very much so is possible. Yes.
Love it. That's a great pick. Great pick. Great moment. Cortland, let's hear it.
Yeah. Okay. So I lot of great moments. It's hard to decide exactly. I was trying to look up some information on the World Wide Web while I was listening to everyone else talk. And I did end up finding what I was looking for here, if I can pull it up on my phone. But like, for me, Emery in the Shed was a top tier moment. Emery is a band that like I was trying to find. I saw them in 2005 on the Week's End tour at the Granada Theater in Lawrence, Kansas. 18 Visions, because I was like, I didn't know any other band. I just knew Emery. It was 18 Visions, Remembering Never, Emery, and Misery Signals was the headliner at Granada Theater. And I didn't know any of those other bands, but I remember watching this like promo video that Tooth and Nail had put out, or they'd put on their website, and like Java player or whatever, and Toby I think was wearing like a headband, and there was people stage diving, and like my 14-year-old ass was just like, this is gonna be the best thing that has ever happened in my whole life. Like I just remember the anticipation of like, I grew up in Kansas City, driving to Lawrence to go to this concert, and it was like really the first show that had like a pit and stage diving and crowd surfing and that sort of thing. Up until that point, like most of the shows I had been to were Five Iron Frenzy, a lot of skanking, a lot of movement, but nothing that extreme. And so it was kind of interesting, like to like be in the shed and Toby coming out and be like, "We're the heaviest motherfuckers here." Whatever he said, which was funny, because they're not the heaviest band. But I remember thinking back to that like 14-year-old me of like, I'm going to go to this really heavy show, and then seeing these other bands that played with them at that show at the Granada Theater. I don't know. It was just like a very full circle moment. Thinking I was 14, February 20th at that show, 34, almost exactly 20 years later. It was a really special moment. That was the only thing that I got like into the mess on, was when they played Walls. I was like, I got to lose my shit for that. Other than that, I really hung back. I sat on the wall in the shed. I sat in the back. I didn't get into any other mess because I'm too old to do that. But Emery was a top tier moment for me, for sure.
I kept hearing about how they were maybe one of the best sounding bands of the weekend. I didn't actually watch Emery at all. I literally just saw them a few months ago, and they've been pretty consistent about touring. So I didn't feel like I was going to miss much if I didn't see them. And I love Emery as well. So I'm a little disappointed I didn't get to see them, but there were some other scheduling conflicts where I just couldn't see them. But I heard that they were one of the best sounding bands of the weekend.
My Johnny
Which
said
day
that,
did they play? Sorry,
go for it.
I was asking which day did they play?
On Friday.
First day.
Friday, and that's good that they had a good sound, because Friday's shed sound was, I thought, horrible for most of the day.
Yeah.
Especially for Coalesce at night. So I guess Emery probably brought their own sound guy.
I think everyone brought their own sound guy, almost, right? As far as I know. But the shed is very unforgiving. It's very hard to sound good in there.
Right.
So two things. One, my Johnny, guitarist in the Undertaking, said that he's like number one Emery fan, loves them so much. He says it's the best performance he's ever seen by them, which just like as like a lifelong fan of a band, to be able to catch like their best performance for him was such a cool moment. On the shed note, I guess a bunch of those bands that played on Friday brought their own sound guy, and I don't know, gray hair guy from Emery.
Yeah, Josh, yeah.
The keys.
Keyboard. He was helping run sound on the main stage. So I have a feeling that he might have been able to like dial in their sound a little bit better or help, because the word on the street was like, if they used like the in-house mixer for the shed, you sounded better than if you brought your own guy in, because the in-house people that were there with Furnace Fest knew how that room reacted and should sound. And I know that they had a bunch of issues on Friday. And then I think after Friday, they kind of just said, hey, if you brought your own sound guy, like just do us a favor and let us mix your set. Because it was it was not
that
good.
makes sense. And it wasn't just the shed, but all the stages really did struggle with sound. I can't tell you how many times I was in, up near the front, and I know every single song by word, but I just couldn't tell where we were at in the song, so I wasn't singing along as much
Unearth
as
was
usual.
the one. Unearth was the one for me. It was like all bass and drum, and like that's the band that you want, like the sweeping solos and stuff.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this isn't great. And I actually walked out around and outside the shed, like it sounded. You're like, oh, I know what song that is. But anyways, just to put a pin on, I know that they were aware of the sound issues on Friday and they tried to fix it.
Sure.
Yeah, it seemed to
Okay,
have
right
gotten a
on.
little bit
Yeah.
better.
And
Yeah.
and I would
the
say,
weekend,
like, to
so.
Mason's point about missing Emery, there was a ton of sets that I missed as well this year. Like, and I thought one of the things about being year 3 was, or year 4, sorry, it was year 3 for me, year 4 for everybody else. But like, I had seen a lot of the bands, and so I did feel like I could like kind of like duck away and hang out, spend some time with people. And it wasn't like, oh man, this is the only time I'm gonna get to see Blindside or whatever, right? Like I'd kind of gotten the experiences, and I loved that. Like I loved it that there wasn't a ton of pressure to be at every set, because it was like this, like it felt like it was kind of planned that way. Like Furnace Fest 4 was like, gave us all space to like kind of chill out and like, you know, just spend time.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, Jason, let's hear it.
So this one was really, really special for me for a lot of reasons. I had a handful of like uniquely personal moments in this one. Like, in addition to hanging with y'all and seeing bands, and there's definitely still at least one band I want to talk about. But I don't know if any of y'all were there Thursday, but the first event on Thursday was actually my podcast got to do a live show at the same venue where Zayo, Callous Boys, Further Seems Forever, Counterparts played later in that day. So yes, I will say until the day I die that I opened for my favorite band, Zayo.
Good call. Good
Nice.
call.
Count it. And that was a lot of fun. We had like people, we had a quote unquote circle pit. We had people just walking around while singing Country Roads. And count it, man. That's a circle pit. So that was awesome. And on let's see, the day Five Iron Frenzy played, Five Iron Frenzy would be one of my like top 5 experiences at the show. I walked up to their table and my wife was talking to Leonor about my novel, which, not to turn this into a plug, but it happens to have like 70 references to One Girl Army by Five Iron Frenzy because it's a character's AOL Instant Messenger handle. My wife is telling her this and I'm like, okay, well, hey, let me just give you a copy. And she's like, okay, let me trade you a shirt. So I have a One Girl Army shirt that Five Iron Frenzy gave me in exchange for my novel. Then they played One Girl Army. That was awesome. They also played Every New Day, and I was damn near about to cry. After they, like 40 minutes of just jokes and shenanigans and nonsense. I think I was standing like 10 feet behind y'all, Cullen and Mason. And like they play Every New Day, and it's just on a dime. It turns into the most sincere worship moment I have been a part of since I left church 20 years ago. And also Garrett from Silent Planet, I walked up and showed him like, hey man, on the last page of my book, there's a Super Bloom reference. And he's like, oh, awesome. Give me a hug. So like, and then they rocked. They were great. So like just having those personal moments in addition, like my homie Justin Ferguson, he was there the whole time. That was great. Like all of his favorite bands. My wife was there the whole time. But yeah, like just the sense of we've been coming to this thing since 01, 02. So like this is very much lifelong for full circle stuff. And like walking out after Under Oath's show when like everyone was buzzing and like you're seeing people crying and stuff, there was a sense of like I would not know how much I missed this if they hadn't brought it back for these last 3 or 4 years. Like if we hadn't gotten this second chance, it would have never really sank in how much the first round meant. So yeah, it was more than just music, and I'm just really grateful.
Love that.
Yeah, I'm hoping that like something like Furnace Fest reinvigorates for a lot of people that music isn't something that we can especially this kind of music isn't something that we can just take for granted, right? Like a lot of these bands started off, even like the ones that got big like Under Oath, they all started out really small, and for the most part most of these bands that are playing Furnace Fest are small bands, and they totally rely on us showing up to their shows and supporting them, buying their merch, and so I hope that like something like this reinvigorates that like energy for people to like just show up like they did when they were youth group kids or whatever, and buy their merch and just be there. And that is what the whole reason why a band like Under Oath can become Under Oath. And so yeah, I'm hoping that like just these last 4 years reinvigorates that for people, moving into, back to kind of going home, and then now knowing bands are going to be, coming through a city near them or whatever, that like it's so important to just show up and support their local bands, and also the bands that they love that are coming through their town.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, last one for this first kind of round of moments. Adam, let's hear it.
I'm gonna go with the Slick Shoes set. That was like one of the I grew up a tooth and nail kid, so like my only punk bands were like MXPX and Goatee Hook and Value Pack, back in the late 90s. And then I remember getting their EP in like 96 or 97, something like that, and it just blowing me away. And I only saw them once, and that was back when Rusty came out, their first full length, which was probably 97, I think. And to just be able to see them again and just watch them kill it. And I'd, become friends with Joe, the drummer, on Instagram. So it was nice to meet him and talk to him for a bit. But and that dude's 50 and just still playing fast as shit. It's like just an incredible band still. And I love that they're still doing it. They're still putting out music, and they got a new one on the way. So I was just really, really stoked when I saw the lineup come out that they were on it. So I was looking forward to that the whole time.
Love it. Those, like, some of those old punk bands, it's just like, Dogwood being kind of another one, like they're still doing it. It's so cool to just see bands like that they've been around for what, like since at least the mid 90s, like Slick Shoes, Dogwood, and they're still tight as shit. They're just so
also
good.
Those were two bands that were extremely good sounding. I mean, they sounded crystal clear on that fountain stage.
Yeah.
It's a good pick. Good pick. All right, back to me, and we'll do our second moment. So this moment, I guess maybe is like less of a moment and more of just an observation about not just this year's Furnace Fest, but over the last 4 years. And I don't know how Furnace Fest compares with this in terms of other festivals, but the amount of kids that are at Furnace Fest like gives me a lot of hope. I saw kids stage diving and moshing at Blindside and Norma Jean and all these other bands. And like, I mean, there's like not just like 13, 14, 15-year-old kind of high school age kids, but also like young kids that are like elementary school, and they're just like going for it. And I just loved that, like, this was a community of people that it didn't matter whether you were in your 50s or if you were 5 years old. Didn't matter. Like, you were still going to be just as much included in this music as everyone. And so I just really loved that about Furnace Fest. And I was like even thinking like, like the 5-year-old kid that's stage diving for the first time. Like, I remember Cullen, was it maybe Idle Threat? There was that kid that was maybe like 10 years old right next to us, and you were like trying to like, hey, you should go up there and jump. And he eventually was like, oh, I think I can do it. And then he like goes up there and he like does like a little kind of back stage dive thing. And it was like, that kid now, he's 10 years old. That kid might be an Idle Threat fan for the rest of his life, right? All because of that moment. And I just like think about how many other moments of that for all these other kids that were there. Just really, really cool. So anyway, that like to me was not just like a special moment of this year's Furnace Fest, but that's something that's been pretty consistent over the last 4 years. And so that's just something I really appreciate about Furnace Fest, is how everybody seems to be really included, especially when it comes to especially when it comes to age.
Mason, I said several times, like during the weekend, the crowd is just noticeably young compared to previous years, like compared to the year before, which is probably, if your headliner isn't Pennywise, the crowd probably looks a little bit younger the next year. But yeah, it was just, in like demographics of this particular call aside, it was a very feminine crowd relative to previous years. So like, yeah, I think it's completely valid that those things add to the sense that this won't necessarily be the last event like this.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. It's going to live on now.
All right, back to you, Colin.
Oh, it's back to me already. All right. I'm going to have to go with Blindside here. The Blindside set, everyone knows, if you listen to the podcast, I evangelize Blindside all the time because I think that they're perfect in every single way. It was an emotional set for me. Some of those songs, man, they hit the absolute core of me, the emotional core, the spiritual core, the mental core of me. Every single aspect of me is like wrapped up into those songs. And not just the album About a Burning Fire, but everything from their catalog. And from everything from being able to get some vinyl that I never in a million years would have thought that I would be able to have, to, seeing the love that was poured out on that stage was just, it was transcendent to me. And I also loved.
Did you get both the records that they had pressed?
Of course, yes.
Good job. Yeah.
I would not miss that for the world. And A Thought Crushed My Mind is honestly, like, it's probably my second favorite Blindside album. So the fact that came out, like I said, I cannot believe it to this point.
My favorite thing about was realizing the crowd sings along in his accent. The crowd sings along.
It's like that.
And it's beautiful. They say pitiful.
Beautiful. Yeah. The thing that I loved about that Blindside set so much is like there seems to be a very good chance that we will never see Blindside ever again in the States. And so that was like a moment for me where I was like, I need to soak in every single moment of this set, because it's very, very likely that no one, at least in the States, will ever see that band ever again. And so that was like, I think, special for a lot of us, because I think a lot of us, whether we were conscious of that fact or not, I think a lot of us kind of were operating if that's probably going to be the case. Any other thoughts around Blindside?
I was a little bummed he blew his voice, to be honest. But
I think he blew it way sooner, 2 years ago.
Really? Okay. I haven't seen him in a long, long time. So I was like, okay, can he still do it? And for him to have kind of blown it by talking to people, like he said I was a little bit bummed. But that's like,
right,
picking nits because they crushed and everybody was singing along. But
and his blown voice is still like better than so many other people's voices.
No, he
I get that. I forget what order we were in, but I think we're going to Eric. Oh, or no, sorry. Yeah, you're right.
It was
me
last time.
Yeah, it's you.
Well, mine's more of an emotional, just feeling that there's so much joy, and that's like insanely cliche. But it just even having these conversations with you guys, like everybody's so happy talking about the joy that seeing a band that they saw when they were kids come back or whatever. I think this weekend gave everybody this just emotional feeling of joyfulness. And I think that that's something in our culture, whatever you want to go, like, I feel like there's so much negativity out there that's important for us to kind of hold on to. And I saw it from Josh Kemble and Dogwood. Like, he was so happy to be up on stage and doing his thing. The Beautiful Mistake, we're friends with, they're both from San Diego, so we're friends with those guys. And Josh and that entire band, like, they were so happy to be able to go out there and play. And that list is so long, even in the Facebook Furnace Fest community group. Like, so many people just expressing pure joy about what we were all able to witness, and the feeling that we all got to have of seeing these bands, seeing our friends, seeing people experiencing all of this. And for some people to be able to go home and say, you know what, it's not too late to start a band. For some people to go home and realize, you know what, it wasn't a phase. This is who I am. And that kind of stuff, I think, is so important, especially when you're working and you have just a lot of stuff going on, to kind of pause and remember some of that stuff. And so that's just a good one for me, is that there was so much joy in Birmingham this past weekend, and then we kind of all disappear and go throughout our lives, and hopefully we spread some of that joy into different areas of our lives and stuff.
I love that you mentioned like joy, and I want to just maybe reiterate like how much joy I see from so many bands, right? Like I understand for a lot of bands, especially bands that are like still constantly touring today, like, just going to another festival might kind of be a drag for them. It's just like, oh, it's another day. another day I have to perform and everything. But to see bands like you mentioned Dogwood or Beautiful Mistake, and just seeing like their joy, and they're around the entire weekend. They're like, I want to soak in every single moment as well. Like I still remember, I think Matt from Norma Jean, their drummer, even posted on like the Facebook group afterwards after their show, and was just so full of gratitude about like just being there this weekend, and like how grateful he was for the kind of show that they had. Just to see the bands themselves, like not just kind of get sucked into like, oh, this is just another day at my job kind of thing, but to actually just like fully experience this moment and be joyful about it. Like that's really cool for me as a fan to like see the bands themselves also really be into the festival.
Yeah.
I always like to look over to the side of the stage and see who from other bands is watching.
That's a great.
Yeah.
The chances are, if you saw Austin watching, he was probably going to have a little cameo.
That's right.
I did see Austin a lot. I didn't know
only
23 sets?
2.
Oh, 2. I could have swore it was
My
23.
friends asked me to sing in the shed. I'm going to take advantage of that opportunity, okay?
Hell yeah.
Never going to happen again.
Fair enough.
Man,
fair
you
enough.
shoved my face so hard during Idle Threat. I was not expecting it at all.
Yeah, I loved when you were singled out there. Eric, let's go to you.
My number 2 is He Is Legend playing I Am Hollywood in full on Friday, I think it was.
Yeah.
As y'all said, there were some sound problems Friday, and I think there was some with theirs too, but it wasn't distracting from the performance like unfortunately it was for some of them. But that album's just like blew me away the first time I heard it. So experimental and heavy and melodic and just all the things that I was looking for in music at that time. And I thought it was pretty cool that like they snuck in like a little mini cover of like A Prayer by Madonna and Fancy by Reba McEntire. I know they subbed out their Blind Melon lyrics for one of those. That was pretty exciting for me and fun to send to my coworkers who may not listen to this kind of music, but do know Madonna and Reba McEntire.
Yeah.
Speaking of He Is Legend, by the way, like Cullen and I were up front for that show, and it was so good. It was far more by far the most like raucous He Is Legend show I've ever been to. It was so good. But also, I got to see like Skylar walking around the rest of the festival. I think he was there for pretty much the other days, and I certainly I remember when I was at 5 Iron Frenzy, I saw him in the back, and I'm like, Skylar Kroom is a 5 Iron Frenzy fan? Like, I was just like, wow, that's cool. So anyway, it was just like cool to see Skylar, just like really enjoying the moment as well. I think 5 Iron, I think He Is Legend is one of the more underrated bands from this scene. They just don't get as much love as I think they deserve. And so, to see like basically the shed just like totally packed and people just going all out for that show was really, really cool.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. I think Cortland is next.
Yeah. I'm just going to echo like what a lot of people have said. I mean, 5 Iron was like my number 2, set of the weekend. And I didn't get to have my kid with me at Furnace Fest, but I took my kiddo, who's almost 13, to a 5 Iron show in Denver several months ago. And like getting to experience that with him and like getting to see, you mentioned like, these other bands, like people from other bands, like watching 5 Iron. It really did like make me think about like the way I saw 5 Iron. They were like one of the first bands I saw in like, I don't know, 2000, 2001. There was a little venue in Kansas City called New Earth Cafe. Shout out to Denise, this little like 5'0", super charismatic woman who ran this little venue in the basement of a church in Westport, Kansas City. And like I lived in that venue as a kid. I remember going to that first 5 Iron show and meeting several people there I think I must have been like 12 at the time, and like feeling like, oh, there's people who get me who like accept me, not realizing at the time like how different I was going to feel my whole life. And then going to shows, I mean, Showbread wasn't there this year. They've been there, I think, every other year of Furnace Fest. Seeing Showbread, you know, this woman who ran this venue in Kansas City, it's called New Earth, and it was called Main Street Cafe. All of these bands that played Furnace Fest probably played that venue at some point. And like I said, Denise was this little old woman who ran that venue. And she would let us bring food for the bands beforehand, and we get to hang out with the bands if we brought food. And so like I would bring food and like get to eat with bands. And then we would all like gather up and like pray before the show, of course. And like just like the moments that I had with the guys from Showbread, the guys from Demon Hunter, the guys from like all of these bands, like literally like taking me aside at 13, 14, 15, 16 years old and like seeing me in a way that no one else in my life saw me. Sitting there watching Five Iron Frenzy play, it just like echoed back in my mind, like how much this music has, you know, when they were playing, oh well, man, what's the whatever for a sellout, that song, someone help me out. Yeah, Handbook for a Sellout. I was like, man, yes, like this idea that like I was this like made fun of nerdy weirdo kid, and there was this community of people who said, no, you're fucking weird and that's cool. And I don't know, saved my life in like so many ways. And so Five Iron especially, I think, is like a very like, they encapsulate that. I'm rambling, I'll stop.
I love that you said that it saved your life, because I mean, I think we could say that about a lot of the bands that play at Furnace Fest, but I think specifically this year, I felt like that was the case for a lot of the bands and for a lot of people. You know, there's such a connection there. You know, lyrically, they, you know, might have pulled them out of a dark place in life, or you know, gave a community to someone at a certain point in time that they desperately needed a community, right? And this is kind of like a celebration of that.
Love that. Love that. Jason.
So I did a grab bag at number one. Let me get more specific this time. Actually, Cortland, I just texted my wife and asked. She's from Kansas City, and she was there around the same time. New Earth Cafe. She's like, oh yeah, I was there all the time. So we got to compare notes. Y'all were probably at a lot of the same shows.
Absolutely.
Under Oath is probably the band I've seen the most. I saw them back in their fucking black metal days. So like it's kind of been a long running thing. Excuse the barking dog. The Only Chasing Safeties, it might be my favorite rock album by anyone who's not Zayo. So them playing that was special. And then the encore stuff, them playing Sun Sleeps from Changing of Tires after saying they were never going to play it again. That was my biggest mark out moment of the entire weekend. It was like, I just know it's coming. I just know they're going to do it, you know, but like, I didn't know until they actually started playing it. But like, that was, yeah, that was special. That that set, Under Oath set, closing the whole thing down, a million people on stage, a new song that fucking rips. It was perfect. It was so good that it made me sit down and write down like the 10 best shows I've ever been to. And Adam, I'm not saying this just because you're here, but 2000 Hopes Fall at Cornerstone is on the list. I have previously written about that set, so I can verify. I'm not saying it just because you're here. But it's like Outcast, Goody Mob, Zayo, Converge, Carly Rae Jepsen, Deaf Heaven, and then Under Oath from this past weekend. It's on the list.
One of these is not like the others, and I like that.
Yeah,
the only list
she's
that
number
Carly
one.
Rae Jepsen and Under Oath are both on. It's fucking rad.
I think Justin Jefferson, or not Justin Jefferson,
Jones.
Justin
Yeah,
Jones.
I was gonna say.
Justin Jones might say something about that.
Under Oath, man, I love that they came out to Some Seek Forgiveness, Others Escape, especially with how much like apologize to anybody who's offended by Under Oath not being a Christian band anymore, but for people being like, I wonder if they're gonna play that one song. Like, of course they're gonna play it. It's on the album. They're doing an album playthrough. Like, it's like, just because they're not a Christian band anymore doesn't mean they're not gonna play like a song on the album. And it was like the rendition of it coming out first was amazing. So I just like, that's my like one rant with Under Oath. It's like, just because they're not a Christian band anymore, they can still play the songs that have spiritual overtones to them, and it's awesome.
Dude,
So that was cool.
I did a podcast episode with my friend who didn't grow up religious. I have a religious, like, faith-based podcast, but like, and she was like, that when like, Jesus, I'm ready to come. She's like, I have no idea what the fuck that meant, but she was like, that went hard. Like, but her whole life, she was like, no context. It's still amazing. It's an incredible song.
Yeah, it was a thing for like, months. Like they did that live album during quarantine where they played that song and they sang all the lyrics, and it was still like, are they going to hit all the lyrics in this song? Are they going to, but they led with it. They leaned all the way into it. It was a completely sincere performance.
To juxtapose that, I did like that on the Furnace Fest community page that there was somebody that announced how many times Spencer said fuck and shit.
You need both. You need a little bit of both.
They love to do that for Devil Wears Prada too, so I think it's a little bit tired.
They certainly
like,
do.
I don't go to a Quentin Tarantino movie and count how many times he says a bad word in it, but
I do.
Okay.
You got to get a life.
But would you count how many times Quentin Tarantino says Jesus? See if they play the sides like that.
There you go.
No.
So
I wouldn't.
As much as they have like, as much as Under Oath has maybe like said that they're never going to play When the Sun Sleeps, and I thought maybe Furnace Fest would also be the last time that they ever play that. I will say I did just see Under Oath again yesterday. They played in Minneapolis, and they did play When the Sun Sleeps again. So maybe it's just like, maybe on this tour they're playing that song. But I thought that was interesting. I'm like, oh, I was like convinced they like were going to retire it at Furnace Fest. And nope, they're still playing it. What I'll mention about Under Oath, just one quick thing is, even though I think the Norma Jean set was like my highlight of the festival, I can't think of a better way for the festival to close out than that Under Oath set. Like the way that they were able to close out with Writing on the Walls, everybody, as many people as possible were packed on that stage. I bet there was probably a couple hundred people on that stage on that last bit. And people were like moshing on the stage. Like that was such a cool way to close out the festival. So even though Norma Jean was my favorite moment of the fest, I can't imagine a better way for them to have closed out than have Under Oath, and especially that particular song. It was super cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to our last moment for each one of us. I'll start off again, and then we'll jump over to Cullen. I'll name something that maybe is, again, maybe less of like a moment, but just something that I think made Furnace Fest really special. But I remember the day after the festival, there was a picture that somebody posted on the Facebook community group of Chad Johnson stage diving during Under Oath with a big old cigar in his mouth. And I remember that moment because I was like, he like jumped right and like landed right in front of me. And then today, I think maybe it was today or yesterday that Johnny posted this really cool video of him running out and stage diving. And I was like thinking to myself, there is probably no other festival in the world. And again, I haven't been to every festival in the world, so I don't know. I could be wrong, but I just would be I think I'd be hard pressed to find another festival where the organizers are legitimate fans of the music to the point where they'd be stage diving just like the rest of us fans. I just think that is something that's super special about Furnace Fest. It really just makes it such a different feel of a festival than any other festival I've been to. And so that's just something I really cherish. And even the fact, like, I know like Tim from Under Oath made a comment, and it probably is true. But he made a comment towards the end of their set about like, this might be the last time they ever play a show without a barricade. And, just to think like for some of these bands, they get so big that, yeah, they might not ever play a set with without a barricade ever again. And so I think just again, like that, Furnace Fest to create an environment where you can have a band as big as Under Oath to be able to play a show where the audience is able to get far more intimate than a lot of these bands are now playing for audiences. Just really cool. So, but really more than anything, the special moment for me was just how cool it is that Furnace Fest was able to create an environment where the bands, the organizers, and the fans all could actually be fans. Like that is just like something cool. And I just can't imagine there's too many other festivals quite like that. So that to me is another really top moment.
I think we do have to call out Johnny for stealing your 2022 stage diving form, though, Mason.
That's fair. I mean,
leapfrogging off.
It was great form,
man. That's it was great form.
He's got better triple jump form than I do.
Yeah, he's using his mirror neurons to figure it out. That's good. I love it.
Good old Johnny.
For my last one, I was gonna say the no barricades thing, because that's another thing that I keep thinking about, like wanting to go to other shows and stuff like that, but I don't want to be separated, 9 feet from the stage. That's feels so lame and boring and not fun. So I guess I got to go to an undertaking show, because most undertaking shows don't have barricades, right, Austin?
Do they even have fans?
Yeah, exactly. No, they're super intimate.
They just bring just real intimate shows, and they bring cooking utensils.
Man, I thought you were going to say something nice.
that was nice. For real. I actually did mean it as nice. Mason didn't, but I meant it as nice, because that feels so much more authentic and a show that I would go to. I would not go to an Under Oath show at a big concert, at a big venue. It just doesn't sound appealing to me, because I want to be able to get a part of it. But my actual last one was hard for me to pick, because there's a number of different moments that I want to talk about. But I'm gonna throw a curveball here and say Unity TX was, or Unity Texas, or whatever. That show was incredible. I saw on the Furnace Fest community page where they said when they were asking about whether or not they would want to play, their manager had told them it's a slightly Christian music festival, and you got to have a playlist that'll work for it. And they're like, yeah, we'll figure it out. And they were starting to play one song. They're like, wait, we can't play that here, or something like that. But they went hard, and that was legitimately heavy. Like, I was actually a little bit terrified for a couple moments when they were playing. Hair stood up on the back of my neck, and I hadn't even heard them before this weekend. I had heard a couple songs from a friend that was with us, and I was like, oh my God, I have to go to this. And it was well worth it. I think it was a really good palate cleanser too. Adding some hip hop elements and stuff like that. You just don't see that very often elsewhere at Furnace Fest. So that part was kind of nice to have a little bit of a breath of a different kind of air. Maybe not fresh air, but different air, because there was not a lot of fresh air there at Furnace Fest. So that'll be my third.
Dude, they were a blast, and they were like, it was like, we all heard rapcore a long time ago, but this was something new and different.
Yeah.
It was like, it was like trapcore, but I didn't know the background that they thought it was a Christian fest. I heard them say that we can't cuss or something, and then they cuss their asses. Like, maybe they realized, like, oh, it's not that Christian, or only some of these bands are Christian, or whatever. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, their tour manager said it was a slightly Christian festival, so they thought they had to oblige.
Accurate, I think.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Just like this podcast, slightly Christian.
Just like this podcast. Yeah.
Just like me.
Just like all of us, I think, except for Austin. Austin is a man of the cloth, or was.
Definitely was. All right, Austin, let's hear it.
My third moment is just my entire, like last time when we recapped it, you guys had me on, we recapped, and I said it was just like the best weekend that we've ever had in our entire lives, because the Undertaking, last year got to go and play the festival, and we didn't really know what we were in for. But I would say the same thing with this year. Like, granted, I'm super grateful for my wife and the fact that she was holding down the fort with our 3 kids and let us go out there. We got into Birmingham on Tuesday night, went straight to the Meadows show, then played our show on Wednesday, played our cover karaoke set on Wednesday night, which was a blast, and everybody crushed it who sang along with us. Then we drove to Johnson City, played with the Showdown. Then we drove back to Birmingham to just participate in the festival. And so it was just a whirlwind of like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. nights for 5 nights in a row. We went to the Secret Show with Misery Signals and Shia Halud. And it's just one of those weekends where I was like, all right, we're going to try to do everything and anything that we can just to have like the best time. And you throw in moments like Mason, when I was back with you, and we were just chatting, and it was one of those moments where I was like, okay, I'm not going to listen to any music for a bit. We're going to sit back there. And that's when what's her face wanted to see my eyes to get to know me. And I was like, what are we doing here?
Who is what's her face?
Who do you think?
Oh, is Leonore?
Yeah.
Of course.
He introduced me, and she's like, I'd like to see your eyes to get to know you. And I was like,
is that not like the most Leonore line?
That's 100% a Leonore comment. Yeah.
But just being able to be there, like, it's like one of those things. I'm from San Diego, so it's halfway, if not more, across the country. And it takes a huge not risk, but it takes a lot of effort to get out there. But then for me to be able to sing with David in the Showdown in the Shed, to be able to sing with Idle Threat in the Shed, to stage dive like during the one part in the Showdown, like there are just so many moments like that I'm just like not taking for granted, and just compiling them into like my little memory bucket that I get to hold on to now for the rest of my life. So it's just, this Furnace Fest is the best, man. I'm so sad to see it go. If it's going, if it comes back as a different thing, whatever it is, but it's just such a cool thing. And I'm so grateful to be able to be a small part of it, and for all of us to be able to come here and be like, oh yeah, this was my favorite moment. And we all have different things that really stood out to us. And anyways. Oh, and last but not least, I was able to purchase my own test pressing this past weekend. So didn't know those existed.
Hell yeah.
So now I have one.
I bet you could have just talked to Jason Zamet and he would have gotten you one for free.
I don't think that they would have. So.
I bet we could have talked Jason into doing it.
Anyways, my buddy Sean texted me on Friday morning, said there's Undertaking test pressings here, and I said go back and get me one, and I got one, so that was cool.
I think we've got, is it Eric next?
Yeah, I think I'm up. So my real number one is kind of something that Mason, you mentioned at the beginning, is just getting to hang out with people who I don't see otherwise, many who I've never met in person before, but have known online for nearly a decade at this point, probably. But I wanted to keep my list more music-based. So for me, my number one moment was seeing Further Seems Forever at the pre-fest show at Work Play. The band, they've played, counting that, 3 of the last 4 years, and all 3 times they've been either my favorite or second favorite of the weekend. They just blow me away with their passion and intensity, and skill and melodicism, and how much the crowd gets into it. Jason Gleason's voice is just absolutely incredible, and it just, for lack of a better word, it just moves me when I see them play, and so that was my favorite music-related moment of the weekend.
Did you see the opener that Jason did for them?
I did not, unfortunately. I didn't get there in time.
Our crowd was every bit as engaged and passionate, I assure you.
Yeah, I believe it.
Love that. Cortland.
Yeah, I'll keep mine pretty short here. Music-wise, Evergreen Terrace was incredible. I mean, it was they were the last band that I hadn't gotten to see that was kind of on my list of like I had never seen Zao before, and through Furnace Fest last few years I got to see Zao. I had never seen Hopes Fall back in the day. I got to see Hopes Fall. So like there was some of these bands that I didn't get to see back in the early 2000s that I got to see at Furnace Fest. And this year, my one band that I was like I never got to see that I'm excited to see was Evergreen Terrace. So, and they blew my fucking face off. It was incredible.
It still blows my mind that their drummer is the drummer for Yellow Card.
I didn't even know that, and that's insane. They were amazing.
It blows my mind.
Like literally, I'm still like hyped up about how amazing their set was. I thought it was incredible.
They're good ones. Jason.
So Norma Jean was in my top 3. Evergreen Terrace, a fun thing that happened during their set was watching from the stage as, it's a music festival in Alabama on a Saturday. People are looking at their phones, checking the score of the Crimson Tide game, and seeing the score was going unfavorably. So I got to watch people look at their phones and turn on their heels and leave. Actually, I left too to follow the crowd once it was like 14-0 Vandy. That's when I bumped into Mason and I told you, like, yeah, Bama's losing to Vandy. I guess I'll check back in with Evergreen Terrace. Also in the Shed, Drug Church was awesome.
That was such a sick
very,
set.
very, very fun show.
They actually were able to get some of those people out of the Shed,
Yes.
crowd surfing.
They
That
were
was
doing
so
the
cool.
thing where any crowd surfers had to be carried all the way to the end of the Shed. And for anyone who, any listeners who haven't seen this, it's like a football field size warehouse. So it was like teams of like 4 people carrying each crowd surfer all the way to daylight and then all the way back down. Their show was a blast. So
one thing about them that I've always liked is that I can't remember their lead guy's name, but his stage presence is not like anyone else out there. It's like he should be in an indie band, but everyone's trying to look as hard as they possibly can, or if you're Austin, you're trying to look like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Like he just looked like he was just like hanging out, singing tunes around a campfire. But it's heavy and it's mean. And it was awesome.
I love when he'll do like these little moments where it looks like he's looking up kind of towards like a light, and he looks like a moth trying to like find, like he just looks like a moth to me sometimes. It's funny. He just, I don't know, he just looks like a moth. That's the vibe he gives off.
And so do his listeners as they're flying away out of the Shed.
That's right. But yeah, that Drug Church set was sick.
It is way better to sound like Dave Ramsey.
Before anybody forgets, I do have to shout out the Noodle guy during the LX Dunes set. Did
incredible.
you guys see that?
Incredible.
Yes.
The guy's crowd surfed on stage with noodles, and Anthony Green turns around and knocks it out of his hands into the air. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Did you see like the photo, like the
noodles?
snapshot? They got it like right in the moment. It's beautiful.
Perfectly. Yeah.
I do want to maybe mention one honorable mention. We don't have time for a bunch of honorable mentions, but I just want to name one. And, I know you all kind of maybe have reiterated in different ways, but, obviously the people that you meet at Furnace Fest are just like one of a kind. It does feel like kind of one of those moments where it's like, especially for those of us who like kind of this weird music, like there's not too many people in the world that we encounter that like weird music like us. There's not too many people that, I can just say like, hey, you like, you like Norma Jean. Very few people are going to know who Norma Jean is, or Under Oath, or, Reggie and the Full Effect, or whoever it is, right? There's very few people in the world that know of these bands. And so to like be able to like come together and just like meet a ton of other people that just love the same music as you do is like just super cool. But there was a really funny moment of just meeting people this year where Cullen was recognized so many times. And one moment, I think maybe it was like the first day, like that Friday, and somebody, comes up and is like, you guys from the Black Sheep? And so Cullen and I were chatting with this person, and, we eventually like say goodbye or whatever. And I remember like, as this person's walking away, Cullen kind of, I don't even know if he like directed it towards me or not, but he kind of like under his breath said, gosh, that's so cool. Kind of meaning like it's so super cool to get recognized, and maybe for like, those of us who grew up in South Dakota where like we didn't know anybody who was ever famous about anything. Like it is kind of a cool little moment where, somebody can come up and like recognize your face because they think that what you do is kind of cool. And, but only like at a place like Furnace Fest would that even be possible, because we're fans of this music. And so are a bunch of other people. So anyway, that was just like a really cool moment for like Cullen to like just be like, God, it kind of feels like a little special right now.
Yeah, we're on a dumbass podcast,
Ernie from Idle Threat has that joke where he's like, at the grocery store the next day, and he's like, nobody here knows that I just played Furnace Fest.
It's funny though. I had the same feeling when we met Eric a couple years ago. I was like, well, I've been following this guy on Twitter for years, but I had no idea that was you. Do you remember when we?
Yeah,
met?
I remember we were
Like,
sitting. We were sitting in the shed.
Yeah.
Remember, we were sitting on the side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
And we, I know myself and Mason, we talked about wishing that Benjamin, our friend from Twitter, could be there as well, and he actually did end up able to go this year. So that was kind of
Ben
a
is a cool
full
dude.
circle moment. He is a really good dude.
Yeah.
That was really cool. So, anyway, well, thank you all for obviously talking about your Furnace Fest moments. I would imagine for each one of you, Furnace Fest means something really, really important in your life. And so, thanks so much for just sharing that with us. It's fun to just become friends with each and every one of you, and to be able to share an experience like Furnace Fest is something that there's probably different ways that I'm sure our paths would cross, but to have something like Furnace Fest that brings us all together is just really cool. So hopefully something like that comes about at some other point in our lives, so that we all can be kind of in the same place at the same time. But I'm just really grateful for Furnace Fest, and I would imagine each and every one of you are as well. So thank you all for joining and hanging out and talking about your Furnace Fest moments.
Cheers to you all.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having
Love
me.
y'all.
Cheers, cheers, cheers.